And so I would ask you, what decisions are you failing to make right now? Because I bet you, like me, have some things that are dancing on the periphery of your mind that you know that you probably need to spend some time looking into, but maybe you can't right now. Maybe you're putting it off for a while. Maybe it's just too much. But what would it look like to spend some time on that decision in a constructive way, perhaps with a coach by your side to make a decision that is ultimately best for you and to allow you to take the next step forward? Welcome to Not Your Mama's Midlife Podcast with Stephanie Lee. On this show, we're going to talk about the experiences of high achieving women and men across industries and lifestyles who are at about the midpoint in their career and are no longer satisfied to let life happen to them. Together, we're going to purposely create the second half of our lives by addressing burnout and overwork, by getting clarity on how we're creating the experiences of our lives, including how we're keeping ourselves stuck, by articulating what it is we want for the second half of our lives, and identifying a plan to achieve it. All right, on this episode, I am going to tell you a little bit about an experience that I had this week making a decision. Mainly because in retrospect, I have had so much freedom and relief from making this decision. And I want to encourage you all that sometimes we will sit in limbo with a decision, not really moving forward in one way or another, but that actually making a decision can bring us so much relief. Making a decision can bring so much freedom and really allow you to move forward in important ways. And so I'm going to walk you through my experience a little bit, and I hope this lands for you. So if I'm honest, I had sort of been wrestling with something, specifically giving up some contract coaching that I was doing. Really, in kind of in the back of my mind, I really wasn't even acknowledging to myself that I needed to make a decision about whether to continue or not, because I really wanted, in many ways, I wanted to continue. And so I wasn't going to even let that come into the foreground and really even give it airtime. There was just so much resistance to really looking at it closely. And I had a conversation with a coach friend after some things came up for me, and I realized around a tangential issue, and I realized I needed some coaching about it, and we talked it through. And it became clear on that call that the reason that I was concerned by this other thing was because I had such unresolved feelings and thoughts about what to do about my contract coaching. And one of the things that my coach friend encouraged me to look at, and this is Olga Campora, and I will link to her in the show notes as well, 'cause she's a wonderful coach, y'all. One of the things that she encouraged me to think about was, where was my decision coming from? Where was my decision to continue with the contract coaching? What was driving that? And Olga, having known me for a while, knew intuitively that when I said, actually, the reasons that I would continue doing this are for security and validation, and because I started and I don't want to quit, and because I want them to think I'm responsible. I'm following through on what I said I would do. She knew that I don't want to get that type of validation from outside of me any longer, that I want to actually offer that validation to myself, and that I do not want to make a decision and stick with it if it no longer serves me. Certainly, these were things that we had discussed before. So she was able to draw my attention to the fact that I was kind of holding on to something with both hands for reasons I didn't actually even like, right? And there were some really good reasons to let it go. One of which was simply my time. The other is what I told you about now a couple of weeks ago, which is my desire to have a softer and slower 2023. And that really for me is about showing up to my professional life, to my personal life, and to my business with a different energy, not out of duty and obligation, not dragging myself there, not grinning and bearing it, but really showing up in joy and a desire to serve. So much more enlivening, right? And so we had this conversation and I let it percolate a little bit, knowing that I was having a conversation with my person on Tuesday. And so had this conversation and I let it percolate in my mind. I just honestly, in many ways, put it out of my mind, knew it was sort of churning back there and allowed it to do so. Well, I had to go on to other things, other responsibilities. And so I was traveling that week and I got up one morning and I took myself out for a nice half-hour walk. Usually I listen to something, music or a podcast. I didn't listen to anything except my own inner voice. And I walked and I thought about what I wanted to do and the decision that I wanted to make and why I would do this or why I would do that. And then I found myself really feeling very clear about what it was I needed to do. There is something about walking, and I've read this before. I wish I had a citation for you, but there is something about that physical activity that gets your brain going in a different way. And I was able to see clearly all of the reasons that I was choosing to stick with the contract coaching, all of the reasons that I might be ready to let it go. And I was able to look at them clearly. And so I went ahead and I made that decision and I decided to discontinue the contract coaching. What I didn't anticipate and what actually has led me to do this episode for you all was the intense freedom that came from that. And it was weird because, again, I didn't even really think I was planning to make a choice to continue or not. Of course, I was going to continue. But when I made the decision actively to discontinue, oh boy, did my shoulders release. And then I began thinking about all of the implications of that, the opportunities that I would have to learn from some other coaches, to invest time and energy in my business, the freedom and margin that I would have back in my schedule. And it just felt so intensely good immediately. And then other things kept rolling in. And I had some people reach out about the podcast episode a couple of weeks ago and how it had impacted them and how much they appreciated it, that I was attempting to go off script, even knowing that there would be episodes like this one, which feel just a little sloppy and off base. But I felt like I got some affirmation for the decision that I had made, and I felt really good about the decision that I had made. In fact, I got notified that I have the opportunity to interview somebody on the podcast next month. Her name is Corinne Crabtree. She's a weight loss coach that some of you may have heard about. She's certainly a person of influence within the coaching field. And I haven't done interviews yet. So it's this opportunity for something new and something more. And I felt like by saying I was not going to do contract coaching anymore, and not that there was anything wrong with the contract coaching, but deciding not to do it created all this space for other things to come into my life and created this great sense of freedom and relief. And so I would ask you, what decisions are you failing to make right now? Because I bet you, like me, have some things that are dancing on the periphery of your mind that you know that you probably need to spend some time looking into, but maybe you can't right now. Maybe you're putting it off for a while. Maybe it's just too much. But what would it look like to spend some time on that decision in a constructive way, perhaps with a coach by your side to make a decision that is ultimately best for you and to allow you to take the next step forward? These unmade decisions can seriously weigh us down. They can pull us back and create drag on our desire to move forward in our lives. And so I have created coaching sessions that I'm calling small wins for big results. And these are a perfect opportunity, actually, to wrestle through a decision if that's something that's on your plate. So we're going to do 3 sessions for $497. These are going to be 50-minute sessions where we're going to get you a small win. And maybe that small win is a decision. Maybe it's several decisions. Maybe it's something else entirely, but that will allow you to move forward in a constructive way. And I talk about small wins for big results because for me, my experience has been that the greatest growth comes from small and incremental change. I felt like I actually experienced a lot of growth this week as a result of being able to make and willing to make that decision that I had really set aside. Making the decision opened things up for me. And I would like for you to have the same experience. So reach out to me, DM me on Instagram or Facebook, or email me at stephanie@stephanieleecoaching.com, and let's schedule your small wins for big results sessions. All right. Thank you for sticking with me for the 36th episode of Not Your Mama's Midlife Podcast. Please join me back here next week on your favorite podcast player or YouTube for our next episode. And if you're enjoying the show, please tell a friend about it. Find an episode they would like in particular and share it with them. And if you're really enjoying the show, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. It truly helps others to find the show because it offers it up to them as suggestions for shows they might like if they're watching similar shows that have been reviewed by other people. Thank you so much for your time. It's been great to spend this time with you. I look forward to chatting with you again next week. Bye.